Are you ready to talk about a work of art, Ash?
I am ready to once again delve into the Capcom Masterpiece series.
Is that what this is?
That's the name of the podcast, isn't it? The Capcom Masterpiece series.
Oh yeah, we didn't have a name for it when we first started, so...
Yeah, we can actually say for the first time, welcome back to The List Goes On.
Yes!
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there to say about The List Goes On? The list goes on, really.
Well, before we get into the Game of the Week, Connor, I just want to have a brief moment to say thank you to everyone for their really positive feedback from the first episode. It was just, we got a lot of likes and a lot of really nice comments, and it was very nice to see. It warmed my heart. It was very pleasant.
Yeah, it's been legitimately nice to see that the show has been received very, very well, because I wasn't quite sure how this was going to go down, but people seem to really enjoy it, so yeah, again, thank you so much.
And now here we are.
Yeah, here we are. I mean, for all we know, like, this will probably release a week after we've recorded it, so for all we know, we might get a comment from a YouTube user called Dougalstein that says, you forgot to talk about the Mine Thrower, and I hate that.
I was more imagining that now we're going to release the episode that we're going to release, and people are going to be like, oh, this is stupid.
Right, yes, because that's important. This is now the real shit.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 was a kind of a baseline for a game that is kind of normal.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking, good, most importantly.
What we're saying is that we've tricked you.
Yeah, this is all a ruse.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about trash.
Yeah.
And occasionally a really good game, but for the most part, stuff that is not good. Well, I mean, this is good in its own way.
Well, we'll clarify on that a bit later.
But welcome to the wonderful world of Clock Tower 3.
Clock Tower 3. Another game by Capcom.
Yep. So we've got a lot of Capcom games, all things considered. Like, not just carried by Resident Evil, but just loads of these sporadic little titles we've played have been published by this one company.
Yeah, well, welcome to inviting me to do a games list with you. I will bring a lot of Capcom games.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
When are you going to bring Street Fighter 3? Third Strike.
I mean, that is probably, like, the one genre that we've never done is a fighting game.
No, we haven't.
What fighting game are you going to do?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are into any fighting games.
No, which is perhaps a shame, but, you know, I've tried. There's only one I've ever considered dipping my toes into, and that's Killer Instinct, and it's mainly because its soundtrack and its character designs are very cool.
Yeah, I've bought a fair few over the years, very much in the sense of, this is going to be the one, and then it's like, do any button input, and I'm like, no. Take me back to my role-playing games.
Yeah, oh gosh, I have to memorize these combos and things.
Dude, there's a bit in The Last of Us in which you're playing a fake arcade game as Ellie in a section, and you have to do fighting game inputs to win, and I fucking could never do it. Like, it just really breaks my head.
You mean you're not a Ken main in Smash Brothers?
I'm not a Ken main, I'm afraid to say, but I would be an Alyssa main.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So shall we get into Clock Tower 3?
Certainly. I feel like we should start this off on a similar note to the Resident Evil podcast, where we start on the development. But we don't know as much about it.
Yeah. So I said in the last episode that there wasn't much need to introduce Resident Evil 4 before I then proceeded to introduce Resident Evil 4 for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's a game that's so well known, that's so influential, that's pivotal, really. Clock Tower 3 is not the same.
No.
Like, I would be surprised if most of you had even heard of Clock Tower 3. Even more surprised if any of you have actually ever played Clock Tower 3.
Absolutely.
So, Clock Tower 3... Sorry. Is the third game in the Clock Tower series.
But it isn't.
It isn't, no, true. Alright, so let's start from the beginning. So Clock Tower 1 was a Super Famicom game that is kind of notable because it's one of the first quote-unquote horror games. Like, obviously there's stuff like Sweet Home, which is another Capcom game, actually. They were kind of all over the genre.
Oh, shit.
But Clock Tower 3 was one of the really early games that was trying to be directly scary. And what it is, it's a point-and-click adventure game in which you're walking through this house in 2D, and you're being chased by a scissor man. Horrible scissor man. And you've got to go around solving puzzles. It's very slow. You're trying to control a mouse cursor with a SNES D-pad. Yeah. Which is a bit, not great. But it was well liked. It was a very niche game, but it has its fans. They made... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you say Scissor Man, my immediate thought would be to a Edward Scissorhands style character, but...
So he's a little schoolboy?
Yeah.
Like a little mutated, horrid schoolboy with a big head and massive scissors.
Yeah, he's carrying them almost like hedge trimmers. when Andy tries to cut your head off with them.
Yeah. And so they did a few more games in that series. So they made a PlayStation 1 port of Clock Tower 1 called Clock Tower: The First Fear. They then made Clock Tower 2, but then they released it in America as Clock Tower 1. Because they didn't release Clock Tower for the SNES in North America.
Yeah, that's what confused me, because I always thought that PS1 one was the first Clock Tower.
So there's a game called Clock Tower 1 for the PS1, and then in Japan they made a Clock Tower spin-off called Clock Tower Demon Head, I think, or Ghost Head?
Yeah, Ghost Head I think it might be.
Yeah. That game then released in North America as Clock Tower 2 is also apparently god-awful. Like, there's a YouTuber I watch called Stop Skeletons from Fighting has got a great video about it, but apparently it's so convoluted that it's like, if you move a piece of armor in the first 10 minutes of the game, in the last quarter of the game, you have just fucked yourself over. You cannot beat the game. Like, it's all stuff like that. But anyway, so that was going on. That wasn't really a big thing. It was very niche. It was very, very, very small group of fans. And then, for reasons that I don't quite understand, some kind of weird licensing thing, the people who made Clock Tower went out of business. They were called Human Head. That's what their names were. They went out of business, and Capcom bought the license for some reason, and then made Clock Tower 3. Yeah. Which is completely different.
Yeah, and I assume is the last hurrah of the Clock Tower series. Doesn't seem like anything else has happened since this one.
That's true. So the only two things of note is that Haunting Ground, which is another Capcom survival horror game, is so closely linked with the Clock Tower series that they actually share a wiki.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, like Haunting Ground is on the Clock Tower wiki. And then they also made a Kickstarter game, which name completely escapes me right now.
Yeah, that's on a ship, wasn't it?
On a ship, yeah. It wasn't very good. And that's all there is to say about Clock Tower. There's not really been much else since then.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it seems as though it's one of those series where its greatest strength was close to the beginning of its inception, was when they first gave it a shot. And it's a pity, because when you make more games, you typically learn from your mistakes and you refine things down and make something better, but the spark can be lost. I would say that Clock Tower is not a series that benefits from this so much, because closer to the end of it, they tried to experiment with some things, they changed hands, and a lot of quality was lost and slipped through the cracks. Clock Tower 3, I have no idea how much intent there was behind making this something that was going to reignite the series, how much they thought this was going to work out, but this ends up surpassing all those other games, in my opinion, in the worst possible way, in that Clock Tower 3 is very bad and very, very cheesy in a way that I love.
It's like peak schlock.
That's it.
It's
schlock.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So I think some additional context before we talk about the plot of Clock Tower 3 is the circumstances in which we found ourselves playing it.
Yes, because this was the first one on the list, wasn't it?
This is the first game that we played. There is one slight caveat in that one time you came over to my house and I was just playing the final boss of Clock Tower 3.
Yeah, you were, and I just was there.
You just watched me finish the game, and then I guess a month later I was like, alright, we're playing Clock Tower 3.
Was that only a month apart?
I don't know if it was only a month apart, but...
It feels more like a year or two apart, but...
I don't remember, it's been too long.
It has been too long. It's basically ancient Rome at this point, which... but in any case, I guess because it doesn't seem like development of this game is very well documented, but one thing that is very well mentioned is that this game's cutscenes was directed by a Japanese film director.
I believe it was his final work.
Yeah, the final work of this guy who I really should have written his name down. But he was the guy who made Battle Royale.
Yeah.
A film whose lasting legacy is that it will be mentioned in any discussion about the Hunger Games.
Well, I'm one of those people who can be very pedantic and be like, if anyone ever talks about the Hunger Games, I'm like, oh no, Battle Royale. Yeah. That's where it's at.
Yeah, which to be fair, it seems like Battle Royale has some things going on with it that make it a bit more appealing. Whereas the Hunger Games inspired the Maze Runner and a bunch of these other
Yeah, so this game is weirdly pioneering in a way, in two ways. The first is that it's one of the first games to really employ... excessive is probably the right word, but heavy use of motion capture. I think very much part of the point of it having that famous film director working on it is that the characters do move like they are in a movie. Like, they're very... Not all of them, but a lot of their motions are quote-unquote naturalistic, and they're using motion data and things like that.
Yeah.
And it feels like the developers knew that they had that potential and said to themselves, oh, we can make these characters do all these crazy things and have reactions to stuff.
Yeah.
They might go a little too far, but we'll get into that.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is that, to me, it kind of feels like a proto-version of what became a very typical form of horror game over the last decade or so.
Oh, I was feeling that on the replay.
Yeah, which is the... You are a defenseless person fleeing stalkers.
Yeah.
Like the Amnesia, the Soma, the Outlast. It feels like that, just not good.
Yeah, and this is one of the genres of those where you're not typically given a weapon to fight back. You might be given something to escape briefly, to distract someone, or to put them in a trap for a while so that you can go off and solve a puzzle or something, but this is not the same school of thought as Resident Evil, or even Silent Hill.
No, it's very much doing its own thing. So should we get into the plot before we talk about the gameplay anymore?
Yes, I think that might be a good move. I only had one more thing to say about the cutscenes, which is that this was a 2002 game, and this was a 6th gen game. And the 6th generation is really when, unless someone wants to correct me, this is kind of when motion capture became a thing in animation.
Well, I remember with one of the Onimusha games, also by Capcom again, Jesus Christ, all over the place, there was the thing that they motion captured the horse.
Oh, did they?
And that was like a marketing bullet point. It's like, we've got such realistic cinematic cutscenes that we even motion capture the horse.
Oh, man. I mean, if you're an animator, you absolutely know how hard it is to make horses in animation.
Weird-looking things.
Yeah, but they are weird things. They're cute, though.
Yeah.
But it seems as though because motion capture became a tech that people... it's now so easy to adopt and put into games, it was used all the time.
Yeah.
Look at, say, Sonic Adventure 1 versus Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 1, everyone is so stiff. Not everyone, but a lot of people take the piss out of those cutscenes.
Yeah, we all know about the... this is happening. As Sonic just like crouch stands.
Yeah,
like...
while his mouth is moved by all four corners of his little oval mouth.
Yeah.
But then Sonic Adventure 2, everyone is motion captured, and you see them all move around.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you ever watch those cutscenes, like you look at Eggman especially, but even there's like a scene of Sonic pacing in a prison cell.
Oh, okay.
Same thing sort of happens there. It's very clear. So this was an era of gaming where people went, oh, motion capture's a thing. We've got to use it all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And they, for the most part, do it in this game for cutscenes.
Yeah.
Others, though, you can clearly tell they don't because they are so stiff by comparison. It's jarring. It's the another thing that people talk about with this era of cinematics and games and things is the heavily made FMV where everything looks really nice, and then immediately cutting to gameplay where everyone is standing perfectly still with little text boxes.
It's weird because it's kind of like there's a disparity between the budget of this game and the effectiveness of motion capture, because they obviously have enough budget and time to have done motion capture, but not to make anything else in the game elaborate at all.
Exactly.
So there's like a disconnect there.
There is, and that you can see the director's handiwork, the film director's handiwork, because a lot of the character acting and even the shots do feel like less a film or a stage play. There's a lot of this. My dad used to do amateur dramatics and things, so I used to attend viewings of those, and there's a lot of this sense of you're in this massive stage. Someone goes to an area, picks up a thing, shows another person, they visibly react, they move around the whole set. Which is a little bit endearing because I can't think of many games that immediately have that same level of composure to their cutscenes. Compare it to, say, Final Fantasy X.
Hey, don't you come with Final Fantasy X like this. That game is a cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, everyone's taking every moment to walk around each other and stand perfectly still.
It's like they've all got like their little like X's on the floor they need to go stand to, and the game doesn't know how to not show them walking to them.
Yeah. But a cutscene is nothing without a story. An actor is nothing without a script. Exactly. Let's get into the storyline. Do you want to lead this one, or shall I?
So the plot of Clock Tower 3, much like Resident Evil 4 in the first kind of odd similarity between the two games, is very, very disconnected from the previous Clock Tower games. You play as Alyssa Hamilton, who is a stereotypical, very, very what you would expect a British schoolgirl in like the 1990s, I think.
I think it's meant to be 2000 and something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because her birthday is 1988, and she's meant to be turning 15.
Right,
So
exactly,
So it's 2002. It's the
Okay,
release
yeah.
date.
So it's it's a quote unquote modern British girl.
Yeah.
She is very much like an Enid Blyton, like famous Fantastic Five. What are they called?
I think it's a famous five.
The famous five, yeah. Like she goes to a boarding school. She speaks like, "Oh no, mummy, I must go back to." She's got a very, very. It's definitely what someone who isn't from Britain thinks British people are like.
Exactly, and everything's so antiquated.
Yeah. So Alyssa here, our dear friend Alyssa, has been at boarding school for the last, I don't know, like 3 years of her life.
It is 3 years, yeah.
However, she receives a mysterious letter? Phone call?
She gets a letter.
She gets a letter from her mum, Nancy, saying, "All right, Alyssa, no matter what you do not come back home until you are 16 years old.
Yeah.
Don't you fucking even think about it." And Alyssa goes, "Oh no, mummy's in danger. I must immediately go home."
Oh, there's a slight missing piece there, which is that she's reading this letter, then someone off screen goes, "Oh, Alyssa, there's a phone call from your mum." She picks it up, there is no one on the phone, and that's when she panics and goes home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She, like, this isn't what happens. They show ominously this, like, phone that's just hanging off the hook on a table. But as far as she's aware, her mum could have just pocket dialed her and immediately she's thrown herself into danger.
Yeah, so she returns back to her family estate, which is a very typical British manner.
Yeah.
Only to find herself caught up in a centuries-long plan to attain the power of a god, basically.
Yeah.
Using some arcane rituals, Eastern magic, like all kinds of bullshit that she gets rocked up in.
Yeah, she goes home, she goes to the dining room, a mysterious man is sitting there, and she goes, "Oh, are you one of the lodgers?" And he says,
"No, Connor, please." She's like, "Oh, hello, are you one of the lodgers?"
And he goes, "Yes.
I pay rent here."
You just missed your mother. She just left. And she won't be turning ever again." And immediately...
Yeah, so he like plays along for a second. He's
Yeah.
like, "Yes, I do pay rent here. Anyway, I'm evil."
Yeah, he immediately goes to grab her once to say, "You're going to be mine." She like, escapes.
Yeah, she spins away.
Yeah, she spins away. Fucking listen out for that. Listen out for the number of times we have to say the word fucking spin in this episode. She spins away... and then immediately he just starts laughing and walks up the stairs and just gives up.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the... alright. Like, it's a weird that, like... For the record, this man's canonical name is the Dark Man. He's a pale-faced man wearing these dark clothes, and I want to briefly jump back and say that the intro to this game, like the opening cutscene, actually fucking rocks.
Oh yeah?
It's the Dark Man walking through this street. There's decrepit dolls, there's newspaper clipping, you see an axe lying around, and it's showing these scenes and signs of all these murders that have happened as he ominously approaches this manor that magically transforms.
Yeah, it turns into the clock tower, doesn't it?
Into the clock tower. And as a cinematic, it looks amazing. I legitimately think it rocks like hell.
I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but we are, as we were with RE4, we do have a copy of the game in front of us just for ambiance, I suppose. Is this a screenshot from that cinematic?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the European box art for Clock Tower 3, which is a silhouette of the Dark Man standing before the manor, with the logo beneath him. Logo's a bit tacky, but the scene itself looks really, really nice. It's a really nice bit of box art.
Yeah, it's a very good shot. It kind of reminds me of The Exorcist.
Yeah.
You know, with like the priest standing in front of the house.
Yeah. The Exorcist 1 and 3 especially have got that kind of vibe. But do you want to take a wild guess of what the American box art looks like, Ash?
I know exactly what the American box art looks like, Connor. Of course I do. It's a CG render of Alyssa looking a bit perturbed.
Yeah.
She's like, ooh. She's got her hand in front of her face and she's like...
Yeah, there's nothing in the background. It's just black space. I feel like we're going to need to show some restraint on this podcast and not do this too much. But it's definitely one of those examples. Actually, you've just found the picture on the back of the manual.
Yeah, so it's on the back of the European. It's also the disc art as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of works on the disc because there's a little
there's like a blue filter. It's nicer on the disc. It's nice as art. It's just not nice as the box art.
Yeah, which is I think it's a point that's been done to death. But this is like it's something I like about the Clock Tower European box art. But And that's when you get thrown into the game where you are.
Yeah, so this is kind of the first example of what this game doesn't really get quite right, is that it feels truncated. It feels like it doesn't quite actually do the work to set up anything that's going on.
No.
Because what happens is that you explore the mansion for a second, and you might think to yourself, oh, I guess this is going to be a Resident Evil type thing. I'm going to be exploring this mansion, trying to save my mother, solving puzzles, blah, 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 so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That is a mistake, my friend. That is a foolish notion.
Mm.
What happens is that you crawl through a fireplace, and you find the sacred water. You're going to remember this because I don't remember it at all. Yeah. But you then are teleported into World War II London.
Yeah, okay. You've hit every nail on the head, but as a brief aside, as far as this truncated, like, doesn't set things up very well, that opening cutscene with the letter, Alyssa's mum gives her entire life story, basically, on this letter, and says, I'm sorry I had to send you to boarding school for 3 years and all this stuff, but there's an ancient secret and you can't know about it. But yeah, you explore your house, most of the doors are locked, it's completely empty. Alyssa's room is fucking massive. She has a sofa and a armchair and a massive television. It's ridiculous. She then like gets a little vial of water that she splashes on some seal to go to her mum's room. Finds that oh no, I'm jumping ahead here.
Oh no.
The fireplace in like the waiting room, I think.
So Alyssa is a member of what is seemingly a very prestigious British family. Like, she has a gigantic house.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's fireplaces and armchairs and
like suits of armor and things. And
stuff.
Yeah.
She this fireplace just randomly ignites. The back of the fireplace erodes into nothing. She just decides, I'm gonna crawl through here because every door in the house is locked.
Yeah.
She goes in there. There's a statue of what looks like a Roman goddess whose eyes begin to bleed.
Yeah.
Her head falls off, and presumably within the statue's head is a letter from her mum and a bottle of holy water that says, I guess you came home and ignored me. Use this to defend yourself against assailants.
Yeah, so you've got to think to yourself, alright, my stupid idiot daughter is gonna come home because she's adventurous or whatever. I'm gonna have to hide the only thing that will save her in this statue's head.
Yeah.
Like, is she making it bleed? Is that her thing?
Yeah, like, why does it happen like that? And why is it's behind a fireplace? It's all video game logic. You can kind of say, oh, come on, it's a video game, it's being silly. But even so, this level of why is prevalent throughout Clock Tower 3, and it's kind of why I love it. Because it manages to be consistent in this weirdness. I mean, later on, you go into this restroom that's sealed by, like, a magic seal. If you splash the holy water in it, a ghost comes out to attack you. I'd like to thank the man outside with a tiny penis for driving outside in his fucking 12-cylinder motorcycle.
Yeah, firing a shotgun into the air.
Yeah, whatever you just heard there. You break the seal on a restroom, and you think, oh, there's going to be a secret behind there. A ghost pops out. You go in there, and the only thing that's in there is the corpse of the guy who died. No reason to go in there. There's no item.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there. There's no reason to go in there. It's a huge waste of your time. But then you go... Alyssa then goes into her mum's room, finds basically nothing there, and then she, like, sits on the bed, goes, oh, where is my mum? Finds that there's a book in there, opens it, and then she hears piano music, spins around, and gets teleported into World War II London.
Yeah, which, it's World War II London during the Blitz, and Alyssa gets bombed.
Yeah, she gets thrown around everywhere. Yeah. Delayed reactions to the explosions, by the way, which look like they've been taken from, like a green screen place, because they look dreadful. It's also one of the worst depictions of World War II London I've ever seen, because every light is on. Which is, kind of why they're getting bombed.
Yeah, not good. They haven't figured that one out yet.
Yeah, this piano music is hauntingly echoing across the whole place, and she's trying to figure out what's happening and doesn't cotton on what's going on.
Yeah. So to kind of step back for a moment, what the game establishes as its structure is that Alyssa is being teleported to different points in time and different places in England, which always seem to be London.
Yeah, well, I think one of them is London, one of them is Sussex, West Sussex, and everywhere else is ambiguous.
Yeah. The kind of idea is that in each of these time zones, a person has been horribly murdered by a murderer. That's not a great sentence, but that has allowed them to become what is known as a subordinate, which is some kind of vengeful spirit who uses the power of the people they've killed to live on for many years, continuing their murderous sprees.
Yeah.
Alyssa is then tasked with basically... It's kind of vague. It's like she has to, like, resolve the ghost's concerns somehow.
Yeah, you have to bring some kind of peace to the people who have been murdered by the murderer. The murderer has killed, like, dozens of people, but you only have to really resolve the peace between, like, 2 of them, usually.
Yeah, there's like a person who he killed real bad. So those are the ones that he's... I think it's the idea is that those are the people who he has used to become a subordinate.
Yeah.
So if you free them, you remove his power.
Yeah. What are they a subordinate to? We'll fucking get to that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's interesting because they play into this idea of, oh, you're trying to make peace with ghosts, because in quite a few levels, you'll find a random ghost that just seems to be there, like... In the London one, for instance, it's someone who presumably died from a bomb, who like was about to propose to someone that they loved, and you have to find their engagement ring and reunite it with the box, so that then they go, oh, okay, like I've been reunited with an object I've been looking for. I can now pass on.
Yeah, and you get an item from it.
Yeah, you tend to get an item. It's usually something that helps you survive your run from the subordinates. But the thing is that this sounds like it would be a rip-roaring puzzle adventure of, oh, I've got to go to the other side of London to fight this thing and come back. They are almost always about 20 feet away from the ghost.
Yeah. So should we take a moment to just sort of briefly talk about the gameplay?
Yeah, this is important because that's kind of where this whole thing...
So, Alyssa, it's a game of 2 halves. I know I'm going to say that a lot. That's kind of my shtick.
No, yeah.
But let's talk about the first half first. So... Alyssa is walking through all these levels, very much in classic survival horror fashion. Mm-hmm. She's trying to basically resolve these mysteries while trying not to be killed by these subordinates who occupy the stage and try and stalk Alyssa. Now, Alyssa has no way of protecting herself. The only thing that you can do as Alyssa is crouch to go into small places and throw water, which you can use to stun stalkers for a brief moment.
Yeah.
So what you do is you go into each of these stages, each of these time places, you walk around, you collect documents, you solve puzzles. It's very classic in that way. But there is one slight nuance to it that kind of changes the whole thing, which is that the game is very bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of these areas are incredibly boxy and limited in scope. They're very small. And like Connor was saying earlier, all of these ghost puzzles, the item is like a room away.
Yeah.
There's like no complexity to it whatsoever. It's just so simplistic.
Yeah, there's one in particular I can think of where there's a guy who's trying to write a note saying, "Oh, I've been thrown into this prison down here by a horrible man, and I'm trying to cling onto the memory of my loved ones, but I've even lost my glasses and I can barely read what I'm writing, and I'll pass away eventually." And I saw the corpse, meant cool, moved forward a little bit, found the spectacles immediately, and as I found the spectacles and was bringing it back to the corpse, because I figured the glasses case has got to be near the corpse to reunite it, then the ghost came in on screen, and I was like, oh, I have solved the puzzle faster than the game has even established this guy as a threat.
Yeah. And so, like, the entire game is like that, right? Where it's just like, oh, I have to get into this little girl's room, the girl who was murdered by the first subordinate. Where's the key? Oh, it's over there.
Yeah.
I got it.
It's over. It's immediately, it's like the next room over.
Yeah.
The levels are tiny and it's very linear, all things considered. Even if you have to backtrack at some point, it is basically going from A to B to C. I've gone from C to B, and exactly. and you're done. Like it's really, it's very, very bare bones, and for arguably a game that arguably a series that would have like ignited this genre, this is so bare. So many of the games that came afterwards did this way better, and we played a good chunk of its kind of successes on this list. Like, you mentioned Haunting Ground. Haunting Ground it shares a wiki with Clock Tower for a reason. It's very similar. Haunting Ground is just Clock Tower but better. But in any case, and so many, it almost feels like this game is a beta for Haunting Ground in a way.
It feels amateurish is the word that I always come back to. It just feels like people talked about, oh, we're going to have all these levels and they're going to have these puzzles. And then when it actually came time to making it, they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, like even the idea of avoiding the subordinate and this kind of idea of escaping from the stalker and the one solution you really have to solve it is again very, very amateurish.
Yeah.
Some of these are designed terribly. It's worth noting, actually, the health system in this game is what they call panic.
Yeah.
Which is that when Alyssa feels threatened, she will build up a panic meter, which when it becomes full, you lose control of her, and if she gets hit, she dies completely. It's very, very annoying to get into panic because you lose a bit of control on her. You can kind of move her away.
You can, tilt her.
Yeah, you can tilt her, but she might just stop right as someone's about to kill her.
Yeah, or get stuck on the environment and things like that.
She will, and but the thing that's really fucking irritating, if a subordinate's trying to attack her and they miss, so she narrowly escapes it, she still builds up panic.
Yeah.
Which means that enemies' effective range is huge.
Yeah.
They are faster than you. And in the case of one in particular, I will fucking get to him. His attacks are faster than your water move, and he can actually stun lock you.
Yeah.
He can hit you once, and as you are lying on the ground to get up, he hits you again, you lie on the ground again, you fall into panic, and he does it again and you die.
It's like there's no skill to it, because even if you nimbly dodge their attacks, you still build up panic.
Yeah.
And this is kind of compounded by how boxy the levels are, because they're very linear and very tight. And in some areas, it's just impossible to get around them.
Yeah, I want to briefly mention the first subordinate, Sledgehammer, where
Who wields a sledgehammer.
A sledgehammer, indeed. Like, the very, very on the nose names for each of these subordinates, by the way. There was one bit I thought, I'm going to be a genius, I'm going to juke him out. There's a little bridge you can crawl under to get an item.
Ah, yeah.
And as a result, I figured, okay, if I lure Sledgehammer to one side of this bridge, then crawl under it, he can't reach me. He's gonna have to go around to try and get me, and I can try and juke him out that way. No. You crawl incredibly slow. The animation to get up is incredibly slow. And Sledgehammer is so fast that as I was like crawling along to try and get the item, I saw him like around in the background like a fucking Looney Tunes character. It felt like it should have I'm gonna play the sound effect over here while I'm doing this, but there's like
Haggity Sacks.
Yeah, exactly like that as he's trying to fucking get you.
I think the thing I always think about is, once again with Sledgehammer, is you're in this cinema, or this, I think it's more of a stage, isn't it?
It's like a theatre.
Like a theatre, yeah. And you're trying to get around to the back of the theatre, and you have to walk through these incredibly narrow corridors, and it feels like the game will just teleport Sledgehammer, so he always meets you in that corridor.
Yeah.
And it's like, I spray him with water, he's stunned, I run down the corridor, it's still a tight corridor, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
Just hope that you can get around him, or it doesn't hit you enough to make you panic, and that's it.
Yeah, basically, the game tries to alleviate this a little bit. Your main line of defense is the holy water you can splash, which you also need to access certain areas of the game as well.
Yeah, that's kind of like the balancing, right? It's like, you can use this to stun enemies, but you need enough of it to get through certain doors. So you can't just like spray the subordinates 5 times to get somewhere.
Yeah, everything else is a single-use item that might help you. There's lavender water, which can calm you down, so basically Alyssa uses the power of essential oils. There are these sigil stones that will, if you're panicking and you're about to get killed, they will act as a kind of a get out of jail free, they save you.
And like, without those, the game wouldn't work.
Yeah, it really wouldn't, especially on the fucker that can stun lock you.
Yeah.
But there's also an item called the Invisible Ring, which I thought when I initially saw it was, I can put this on and temporarily I can hide.
Yeah.
Because if you do somehow successfully juke a subordinate so that they can't find you, the subordinate will give up and vanish. Not in that they will walk out of the map and leave. No, they will summon a little fairy dust portal on the ground and teleport away.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not remember that.
Yeah, they summon a little pool of like blue energy on the ground, sink into it, and vanish. And then, just at random points in the level, they'll just turn up again.
It's a very silly game.
Yeah. On the one hand, Sledgehammer, they at least try to ration that he comes through a room and surprises you, which that shit fucking sucks. Because as soon as he does that, your panic meter fills up by half, and it's like, oh great, that's like a difficulty
What
spike.
was I meant to do about that?
Yeah, like there's never a prompt. On the other hand, one of my favorites, Chopper, doesn't have that flavor at all. He just appears, like not with a puff of magic. He's just, oh, I'm here.
Yeah, and just fades in.
Yeah. Not even that. It's just like immediately he's right in front of you, I guess.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's fucking sucks. But I guess that's worth mentioning as well. There are these hiding spots. Some of them are single use, where you can hide in like a cupboard or something, and they won't find you for a little bit. Others of them are permanent. Like I think it's like Chopper's hut. There's a shower curtain you can hide behind.
Yeah, and that's like that breaks it. You just run back there and hide there, and he never finds you.
Yeah, so he never does. He goes right up to you. He goes, "Oh, nice trick," and he leaves.
Yeah,
Which the way he says it, it sounds like he knows you're there.
Yeah,
and goes,
yeah.
All right,
you got me this time, Alyssa, but next time.
I've actually come back round to Chopper on this like later playthrough.
Yeah.
Because he's actually more charming than I expected for a horrible murderer.
Yeah.
This game's design is some of the worst I've seen because it never feels like it's hit the right balance. You are either cheesing it hard or you are getting fucked over it by it royally.
Yeah.
And one point I think about with it as well are these moths that appear quite early on in the game, actually.
I think the first time is when you're walking on the kind of the supporting bits of the theater, right? You've gone up to like the roof and you're walking on all like the walkways and things like that.
Yeah, there's an opening cutscene for this moth that lands, and as soon as it shows up, the gist of the moths is that they will briefly stun you. Like they can't hurt you, but they stun you. They lock you in place. I think they also alert the subordinate. Which,
yeah, they do. Yeah.
There's a few little tricks. I like them in concept. Like
there's a few little nice tricks.
Nice tricks. There's a few little nice tricks that I like in concept where you might find like a pile of cans on the ground. If you bump into them, it will make a sound that will alert a subordinate that will come to you. Really cool in concept. Terrible in practice because they just teleport and they're just like, I'm here now.
Well, that's the thing about it, right? Is that a lot of these ideas are good, and that has been kind of proven by the fact that so many games after the release of Clock Tower 3 have done similar things. It's just not good in this version of it.
No.
Like the levels are too small for the hiding points to make any sense, because you can always just like go through 2 rooms and get to one, you know?
Exactly. And like with the environments being quite linear as well, like the environments will usually be a line with a few corners, a circle, or they're like a box. There's never an area where you're like, okay, I can hide here for a moment, watch as a subordinate goes past me, and then while I've got a clear shot, then come back round. If you get anything even vaguely like that, the subordinate still knows you're there and will immediately turn around, because they're not going anywhere. They just hit a dead end, turn back around and see you.
Like it really feels like they had a lot of really good ideas, and then they came to talk about it and were like, oh, this is going to be great, and then when they made it, they just couldn't get it right. Like
exactly,
they just didn't have the budget or the scope or the talent to be able to make big enough levels or enough complex design for any of these ideas to have room to breathe, you know?
No, exactly. I want to briefly touch up on some of the other details in the Sledgehammer section before we jump into the second half of the gameplay, because I think your introduction to the gameplay in this section is what kind of makes it fucking great for me.
Yeah. So this is, just for reference, this is the World War II London section.
Yeah, Sledgehammer, like, I personally name all the levels after the villain, because that's kind of what defines them for me, but...
Yeah, the game actually very deliberately splits them up into stages, right? Like, when you save, it's like stage, forest, stage, stuff like that.
Yeah, it does. And I think the makers did some level of research as well, of going, oh, we've actually looked into a murderer that lived around this time and did some things like that. Like, for instance, there is a guy who is loosely based on a guy called William Hague, who...
Whoa. William Hague?
It's not William Hague, it's John Hague?
Yeah, William Hague was leader of the Conservative Party.
Oh! Did he ever melt people in acid baths?
I think he wanted to, but he never won an election.
Okay. There was a guy in, like 1940s London who melted people in acid baths. Confusingly, though, his level's set in 1962, but we'll get to that. But speaking of which,
You okay there, buddy?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm just thinking about this fucking cutscene. So it's the Blitz. It's 1942. And the main targets of Sledgehammer's murders is a little girl called May. She's trying to practice for this piano recital, which, coincidentally, while she's having to practice for this, her father then has to go to war.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about history, you're like, oh, okay, World War II was happening, makes total sense. He goes to fight in France in this grey trench, in this grey no man's land.
Like, the whole premise of it is that he's, like, doing the march into no man's land, right?
Yeah. Like he has this little pocket watch that plays this tune, and his daughter is going, I'm going to learn this tune for the piano recital. You better listen to it on the radio when I win. And it shows this nice little cutscene of this father and daughter bonding, going like, oh, don't worry, we'll have a lovely time, and I'm certain if you put your mind to it, there'll be stiff competition, but I'm sure you'll win. Immediately, hard cuts to this Saving Private Ryan-ass fucking D-Day scene.
So I think this cutscene is, like, the best indicator of this game's terrible tone. Because, like, as you say...
Yeah, he's running through, he gets blown up by a bomb, he flies 30 feet into the air, lands strewn onto some barbed wire while the pocket watch hangs from his chest and plays the music, loud enough that every other soldier turns around and looks at him, and then shortly after that, like, you then go to the concert hall and you fight Sledgehammer.
Yeah. So, it's impossible to really get across how ridiculous this all looks. Like, it doesn't look right.
No.
Like, when he gets blown up, he just goes flying, and it's like, it looks so cartoonish and silly that it completely ruins any emotional impact the scene is obviously supposed to have.
Exactly. Like, the acting is incredibly over the top. The voice acting is usually, like, completely disparate from it. The young girl, for instance, she sounds like she's, like, 25. And Alyssa kind of works, but
she's fine.
Yeah, but there's another character called Dennis who, in every scene he's in, he's flailing around and running around.
Yeah, he's kind of like a proto Ron Weasley.
Yeah, not even proto. Yeah. This was like,
I mean, he's not fully formed as a person.
He's not a fully formed Ron Weasley because he flails around, but he's like, oh, hello, Alyssa. Do you remember when we were in school and all of this stuff? It's atrocious in a way that I adore. Yeah. And in a way, like, no beef on the actors. They're probably fine actors, but fuck me, were they directed terribly.
Yeah.
And it makes this so much better. But what I think, what fucking won me over in this case, but beyond just the cutscenes, is what happens after you find the pocket watch and you go, I'm going to reunite this with the girl at the piano recital to remind her of her father and let her move on, is you go into the courtyard of the concert hall. Yeah. Sledgehammer is sitting on the roof, dangling his little legs like a schoolboy, and he's going like, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill everyone else. For the record, Sledgehammer, fucking like 8 feet tall, muscular guy.
Yeah, so before we reveal the dark secret that we've been harboring all this time, should we briefly talk about Sledgehammer?
Yeah, how he sucks.
Sledgehammer fucking blows. He is so ineffective. So basically, he's chasing you through the cinema or this theater, right? And there are all these, like, activation one-use time escapes that you can use to get him off of you. Yeah. And they make Sledgehammer the doofiest idiot of all time.
Yeah, like, there's two I can think of. There's one where you throw a chair at him and he breaks the chair with the hammer. Like, you're like, oh, okay, clearly that's not going to do anything. But while he's doing that, Alyssa tackles him, pushes him into a wall, and he just sits there.
Yeah.
And he's immobilized. It's not a set time limit. It's only when you leave the room that he actually becomes a threat again. So he gets tackled and just sits there, just like, I didn't see that coming. I need a moment.
It's almost slapstick.
Yeah,
like it's cartoony. It's silly. It makes them seem so doofy.
Yeah, like these are supposed to be these. They're not just murderers, they're super murderers. Yeah. They're full of
stalkers. They're so evil that their evil lets them live on beyond their own death.
Yeah, they talk about how Sledgehammer got hung at the gallows and how, like, he spent ages hanging there and then got resurrected as this spirit that haunts people. And and yet he gets crushed by falling luggage, by falling, like...
And then he's, like, knocked out and lying there, like, oh.
Yeah. So then Alyssa has to confront him, and by has to, I mean the game just decides this is no longer a runaway and now a fight.
Yeah.
As
So, Alyssa. Yeah, so just every single one of these characters has a bunch of quotes, and they're all hilarious.
Yeah.
So Sledgehammer, whenever he's chasing you, just always goes, Alyssa!
I love him.
Alyssa is what is known, and you're going to have to stay with us here. Just keep up. Pay attention. Alyssa is a ruder, which is an ancient bloodline power that manifests itself in teenage girls.
Yeah?
Yeah. It dates back to the time of the Greeks.
No, they specifically say Roman.
The Roman, right,
Romans.
the Romans, yeah. Because of this, Alyssa has the power to have a magical girl transformation in which she becomes a Roman, like, goddess-looking thing. She's wearing, like, a toga.
Yeah.
And she has the bow of judgment, and she can use that to defeat the subordinates.
Yeah, she just stands there, a bow materialized in her hand, she shoots into the sky, and then immediately you cut to, like, you cut back into the game, this fucking music plays, which I'm probably going to make the intro music for this.
Should we talk about a time of confrontation?
Time of confrontation, the one boss track in this fucking game.
That's not the one boss track, is it? Isn't there choppers?
No, well, there's chase themes, but
Yeah.
Chopper also has this one theme.
So I feel quite strongly that we have to attempt to imitate how Time of Confrontation sounds.
Do you want to do the main bit and I'll
Okay.
do the backing?
Yeah, so it goes dun 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 dun, and
it's that.
That's basically that. Yeah,
It's just that for 2 minutes, looping.
Yeah,
and he just. And it cuts to this. He's doing a little bob. His name comes up, and it comes up with how many victims he's killed.
Yeah, it's like Sledgehammer, 100 people killed.
Yeah, and he's like sentenced to 426 years, and it counts down, filling up his health bar. And the word Judgement splashes onto the fucking screen, and suddenly it's a combat game.
Yeah, suddenly you're fighting Sledgehammer with your sick bow.
Yeah.
You've got, like, powerful arrows that can stun him. You do, like, combo attacks.
Yeah, you shoot these light arrows at him, bearing in mind movement mechanics still the same. They still trying to make a combat system out of you can crouch sometimes.
Yeah.
And
So the whole thing is that you press a button to ready the bow, and it auto aims to where Sledgehammer is.
Yeah.
But if he moves, you don't follow him, and
Yeah.
you cannot. The right stick does nothing in this game.
No.
You can't use it to readjust your aim. You can't do anything with it. So if he moves, you're fucked. And that's it.
Yeah.
And like the game is a system in which you have to charge up shots, like powerful shots, to like stun opponents and things like that. And it's so annoying because you begin charging and then he goes, yeah, and moves out of the way. And it's like, no!
Exactly. I mean, what I have to rely on for the most part is if they do that little dodge to get out of the way, I've got to hope I've pigeoned myself between some scenery so that he has to funnel himself in front of me anyway, so I just still shoot him in the front. And the health bars are massive. You're doing this forever, just basically running from Sledgehammer, hoping that like you don't get hit when he hits you, occasionally stunning him. And if you are fucking lucky enough to tether him, you can lock him in place, continuously tether him so that he stays there. You do more damage when he's tethered, and when you have enough tethered, these little balls of light clutch onto him and they pin him there.
And like Alyssa lifts her bow to the heavens and you unleash your Judgement super move.
Yeah, it's like a fucking JRPG final move. It's
like your limit break.
Yeah, it's like if fucking Sephiroth just does his supernova at him. It's ridiculous. And usually those will almost universally kill.
Yeah, they do a lot of damage if they don't kill them.
They kill them in one hit almost all the time. And it's just it's just this fucking tonal shift of just what okay.
It's like nothing in the game prior to the first flight with Sledgehammer even comes close to implying you're gonna have a sick Judgement battle with him.
Yeah, or
you're just playing this Amnesia like you're walking around trying to not be attacked by these stalkers, solving puzzles, and then suddenly it's like, we're fucking fighting, we're doing it.
Yeah, you're part of the ancient Judgement bloodline of like angels, of basically angels on Earth. And it's incredible. And then as soon as that's done, you reunite the ghosts, like the girl and her father. You reunite. They
Where it's
float
like
up
you
to heaven.
return to the main stage, and I
Yeah.
think the father comes down from heaven.
Yeah.
And he's like, May, we can finally go to heaven.
Yeah, and then
And they walk up these stairs, and Alyssa's like, wow.
It-
I did that.
Yeah, she faints and
Yeah.
then wakes up back in the manor that she lived in,
Yeah.
and then it continues the story from there, which, you know, that just seems to be the formula for the most part, right? Is that you go back in time, you defeat a horrible murderer, you solve like a little family thing between some people.
Exactly. You're always being chased by the one subordinate who was like the boss of that level.
Yeah, and the second one, I have been fucking obsessed with this man.
Yeah, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves, Connor. So the second one,
All right.
you travel back in time to 1962.
Yeah.
It looks nothing like 1962.
Mm.
Like I can't fathom enough how little research they must have done on 1960s Britain, because to me, it looks more like 1920.
Yeah, it
Like-
does. I assumed the whole gist was it was going back in time, like
No,
further
yeah.
back, but no. 1960s Britain, it looks just as antiquated, if not more,
Yeah.
than the Blitz. And you just stumble upon like this blind man who
Where it's like you're in like a house,
Mm.
and you're walking around the house, and there's like this old woman who hasn't got very good sight, and she's walking around like, "Oh, Sonny, is that you?"
yeah. And when she finds out you're not her son, she does a weird poltergeist thing, and you have to leave the room.
Yeah.
And you wander around this place for a bit. There's like these minor ghosts that are problems, but you solve them the same way you do everything. You just
They're like the trapped spirits who are awaiting absolution by getting their PSPs back or whatever it is that
Yeah.
they're missing.
Yeah, when they finally get their fucking Burger King 2 for
Yeah,
1 vouchers.
exactly. Yeah.
And
they give you some olive oil.
yeah. And then you just go through this little back room area, and then you see a little cutscene of this young man and this old woman. They meet up, and the old woman is clearly blind. She says
Yeah.
she can't see very well.
So I would say it's very muted, right? It's very like naturalistic. It's like the young man is like, "Oh, mother, you shouldn't be out like this. You'll get a cold. Here,
Yeah.
I made you a sweater."
Yeah. He makes his mother like a shawl. He's a toy maker.
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
all speak in these darling little British voices, like, "Oh, mother, I made you this," and it goes, "Oh, that's so lovely for you, dear." Tiny shawl, by the way, like
Yeah.
I could
Pointless,
yeah,
worthless.
Yeah, really isn't going to help. And it's this nice little touching moment, and then fucking all of a sudden, the door gets kicked in. This fucking 7-foot man in a gas mask and bloodied apron comes in, holding onto a steam pipe. And he breaks in and goes, "Alright, that's enough happy families for one day. You make me sick." And he fucking, like, he grabs the old woman and he drags her, like, across the table, knocking over all the toys. He, like, backhands the man and he goes flying. He starts, like, spraying. I thought it was steam at first out
No,
of the
it's
tank,
acid.
but it's acid. He's spraying acid at them. And they're all shrieking and flailing around. They spin around everywhere. He grabs the mother. He tosses her into like a pool of acid and does the same to the son and all this kind of stuff. And Alyssa's just crawling around in the corner, just like, "Oh my god,
Yeah, that's
like,
horrible."
Like that as this is happening, and it's the most 0 to 100 thing
Yeah,
I've ever
yeah.
fucking seen.
It's like at that point you have to think that the developers know they're being stupid, right?
Yeah.
They can't think this is actually meant to be scary.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you're from 1960 and you've never seen anything like this, then maybe.
Like, it's really shocking because, like, there's a bit with Sledgehammer when he kills May that is a bit silly, where he, like, bursts into her room and just beats her to death with this massive hammer.
Yeah.
And that one's a bit more effective because it's kind of gory and shocking, and you're like, oh, that little girl just got beat to death.
Yeah, and they actually do some decent environment design with that first level with Sledgehammer and May, where you see blood spatters across tons of things, like important objects, like pianos and things, like the piano itself.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice bit of visual coherence and stuff. This is just nonsense.
It's like he just picks up this old woman and throws her in a barrel like
Yeah.
he's Donkey Kong. Like, it's like, it's crazy.
And Corroder himself, alright, Sledgehammer is doofy because he gets knocked over easily.
Yeah.
And
He's also not very fun, is he? He's just like, all he does is say Alyssa at you.
He just goes Alyssa. But Corroder, by comparison, he does this weird little crab walk.
Yeah.
He like crouches and raises his hand. there's another move where he doesn't quite jazz hand, but he does this really weird little shaky hand thing while holding the pipe. And he's a fucking menace. He's loving it. He's all in for it.
He's a fun little guy.
He's a fun little guy for being a horrible murderer who melts people in acid.
What are the things he says?
He does a bunch of stuff. He goes like, "Prepare to die!" and I love him so fucking much.
There is one problem with Corroder, though.
Yeah.
One little tiny niggle that I have, which is that his level is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
His level basically is this tiny shitty house with like a sewer bit that you go into. You go like underground into the sewage system.
Yeah.
And it's just not fun at all.
No.
And Corroder is so annoying because he just constantly sprays acid in your face.
Yeah.
Like, he's not fun to avoid, and the house is so small that getting around him is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, I have this issue where when we first played, you were the one that was mainly playing it, and I was watching, so I got to just enjoy every little detail of Corroder doing his little wobbling and...
Well, I think the thing was that, like, for the Sledgehammer section, you were like, Ash, why are we playing this game? This game is not that great.
Yeah, this game's
and I was like, no, wait.
Yeah, hold the phone.
Yeah. And I think I really vividly recall that Corroder cutscene happening and your little face lighting up and being like, oh my god.
Yeah, this is the best thing I've ever fucking seen. And it's like... The saving grace of the Corroder level being so bad is that it's very short.
The game is very short.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that when we played this, we did it in one sitting in about 4 hours.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 hours. Yeah.
4 or 5 hours, and Corroder's level feels the shortest in particular because it's one street, the house, a little bit connecting you to the sewer, the sewer, and that's it.
And the sewer's not really like a sewer system; it's more like a little channel or like a little like room.
Yeah, it's a tiny channel's the right word for it. It's this little canal with a bit of water. You have to like balance over these beams.
Yeah, it feels like you're in the basement of a castle. There's like these like little like wooden beams, and you find a skeleton.
Yeah, it's the kind of there's very little to compare this game to Resident Evil 4 for, but if I was to, this feels like the entire Corroder level feels like one area in Resident Evil 4. One area before like a walking door is this entire area, is this entire fucking map, and it's so tiny and so short. And Corroder's fight ended up actually being the hardest one I had on a replay because it's a similar premise of you then fight him. In fact, when I got to the room where I'm fighting him, I thought, oh shit, I'm already battling him.
Yeah. Like the scaling difficulty is that each of the killers have more years they've been sentenced to, and that powers them and gives them a bigger health bar.
Yeah, they do have unique moves. Sledgehammer, for the most part, tries to hit you from close quarters, so if you keep your distance and if you tether him, you've got him. Yeah, he's done. Yeah. He has like some super move where he can hit the ground, but like it's so rare, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, in much the same way as the rest of the game, the fights are also amateurishly designed that it's like they all have like free moves, and they're either incredibly easy to dodge or so janky and poorly programmed that it's a nightmare to get around them.
Yeah, like Corroder's gimmick is range. He can throw acid at you, which means you just duck.
Yeah.
And that's that did actually legitimately make it harder. But
it never feels good though. It always feels like you're just kind of like winging it.
Yeah, admittedly, because I fucking sucked at this while trying to replay it.
Yeah.
This fight in particular got quite tense for me because we were like I was down to 1 HP and I was trying to whittle down Corroder, and that actually became legit tense because it was so stiff to control.
Yeah.
But not satisfying combat in any other capacity. Like Clock Tower 3 splits its assets between being a bad combat game and a bad chase game.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't do any of these things right, but the fact that it tries to marry them with this overarching ridiculous premise.
Yeah, like, it's all carried by the tone.
Yeah, the tone and how it doesn't know how to handle it and how to swap it is the best.
Yeah,
the best
it's
thing
incredible.
about this. And Corroder's level ends exactly the same as May's, as the Sledgehammer one. They get reunited, they go to heaven. I thought for a while they were implying the only thing the acid bath did was blind them, but there was a little bit of flavor text to say that the mother went blind and the guy got his eyes gouged out by Corroder before getting melted. But you don't see it in the cutscene, but it's a weird fucking thing.
So this is the next point at which I can once again do my catchphrase of this is a game of two halves. Because beyond Corroder's level, the game gives up.
Yeah, it does.
Like, as we said, it kind of establishes this template of you will travel back in time to a different time period, solve the murder of someone killed by a subordinate, and then proceed. The game stops doing this after Corroder.
Yeah, as soon as Corroder's done, you go back into the mansion. The Dark Man is just there waiting for Alyssa, saying, "You may have killed 2 of my subordinates, but there's still another 2." and then he like whirlwinds her in a magic spell, and then turns the entire mansion into a clock tower that rises from the ground into the heavens. Alyssa is riding on the face of a clock, flying up into the sky.
Yeah, like it's fucking Bayonetta or something.
Yeah, she's like hanging onto it. And then for a brief moment, she actually gets up and goes like, "Ha ha ha!" and she enjoys it.
Yeah.
Before it immediately becomes a nightmare again. She goes, "Ah!" and then the Dark Man reveals that he is going to try. That it is 2 hours away from her 15th birthday.
Yeah. So an important nuance of the Ruda bloodline is that it's only when you're 14.
Oh, it's actually slightly different. It is so the Ruda magic occurs. It starts happening when you're 15 and you lose it by 20. But when you turn 15, that is when it's at its most powerful.
Oh, okay.
So what the Dark Man's scheme is, as he reveals to Alyssa, is he is going to perform what is called the Ritual of Engagement, which is that he is going to kill Alyssa because she is going to become a powerful Ruda and use her magic to become the most powerful subordinate there is, a powerful entity.
Well, I thought the implication was that all of the other subordinates got that way by eating a Ruda's heart.
They did.
Yeah.
And the Dark Man is going to become a more powerful one for a reason that is kind of a spoiler at this point of the story.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it.
We will. But I also want to briefly say one tiny thing about the Corroder level before we dodge that entirely.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bit of writing on the wall in blood trying to be scary that is trying to say, "Get ready to go to hell," which I don't know why you would have that on there, but it's misspelt. It says "set ready to go to hell."
Wow.
It's amazing.
It's incredible work from the Clock Tower 3 developers.
Yeah, good work. So we have to make a quick Dennis tangent. I do apologize.
We have to return to Dennis.
Yeah, briefly mentioned, but between the Corroder and Chopper levels, there is no, not even that.
Because we haven't talked about Chopper yet.
We haven't talked about Chopper yet, but we are like before Corroder, there is a cutscene that introduces Dennis, the bumbling fucking buffoon,
Lovable oaf that he is.
Yeah, childhood friend of Alyssa.
Yeah. So Dennis is wearing like a red stripy jumper as well.
Yeah.
He is the most colonial boy there ever was.
He's got bright. He looks like the spitting image of Ronald Weasley.
Yeah,
He's like a badly modelled Ronald Weasley. Sounds a little bit like it as well because he's like, "Oh, hello, Alyssa.
Hello, Alyssa. Remember me from school?
From primary school? Oh, it was about 3 years ago.
Oh, I love the Queen. I do.
Oh, I do love the Queen." And he basically Alyssa wakes up on her bed after the Sledgehammer level, hears knocking on the window, like, very tentatively opens the curtain to see Dennis, like, slamming on the window, then lets him in, and he goes like, "Oh, by the way, your mum, like, gave me this key. She's already gone to the train station to go meet you." And,
And then what does he do, Connor?
And then he fucking spins around everywhere because for some reason Alyssa decides that she's going to like rush up to him like a feral animal. He jumps onto the bed, rolls around. She crawls after him while he crawls. They do that across the entire length of this giant room. They crawl at each other. And then while he's explaining like what's been going on, he gives her the key. And as she looks out the window forlornly about how she's missed her mum, Dennis then like puts his hand on his head, on the back of his head, and his other hand on his hip, and goes like, "You've really changed quite a bit, huh, Alyssa?" Then Alyssa talks about how dreadful the situation is for about 30 seconds, and then jumps on the bed next to Dennis and says, "Well, you changed quite a bit yourself, haven't you?" And then walks off. It's like the script just got jumbled completely.
Well, what it brings to mind for me is all the complaints people would make about those re-releases of the Star Wars films,
Yeah.
in which George Lucas would just stuff every single shot with a menagerie of ridiculous monsters and aliens and things like that.
Yeah.
It's like they had a scene in the script that was Alyssa and Dennis talk to one another. And then someone, probably the cutscene director, was like, oh, nothing exciting happens here, but we have this motion capture stuff.
Yeah.
So they're all just going to flip around all over the place.
they're gonna spin around. Alyssa loves doing this thing in a lot of shots where she likes to grab furniture behind her.
Yeah.
So she keeps spinning around to ensure that she is like, she has her back to any like desk or chair or anything, so she can grab it by the back and like look around and panic.
It's like every cutscene seemingly has a mandate that it needs some level of motion capture. So in scenes where there's no organic reason for there to be some, characters just spin for no reason.
Yeah, I do apologize that we've jumped back into motion capture again, but I cannot stress that's such.
Don't worry, we'll let it in post. It'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I'll rearrange this like the Clock Tower writers did the script of the fucking Dennis bit.
So anyway, the developers at this point have given up on the template. The game is now no longer a time-traveling escapade. It is now, you're at the top of the clock tower, and the Dark Man is like, Alyssa, I'm going to eat your heart, blah, blah, blah.
The ritual of engagement, Alyssa.
He then flings her from the tower, if I recall correctly.
And she descends into a cave and lands in a cave.
And this is where we are introduced to the third subordinate, the one with perhaps the best voice lines in the entire game, whose name is
Chopper. Our boy Chopper, who... I remember when we were playing, because his section was so long, I was like, oh god, this is the worst guy. I hate Chopper so much, but he's better than fucking Sledgehammer.
So Chopper is like a Nosferatu fishman? He's like this grey, bald guy with like a very animalistic face.
Yeah.
And like tattoos and like weird like slits in his eyes.
Yeah, he's got red tribal tattoos over himself, like he looks like the fucking the like Game Boy Advance with the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The...
And he's got like this scarf and he wields 2 hand axes, I believe.
Yeah. He is supposedly, I'm gonna double check my notes. He is supposedly based on a man called Howard Powell, a Welsh lumberjack, born in 1655. I don't know why the fuck he looks like a Maori warrior.
Yeah, he's being filtered through the anime bullshit thing where someone's gone, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. Yeah. He also has his own music, doesn't he, Connor?
He does. From this point, the chase music changes. It goes from this completely, like, kind of mundane, like bum 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 bum, to being this do 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 do.
It's like this weird like techno EDM sounding thing, isn't it?
I think I might make it the outro music for this episode.
Oh, definitely, 100%. Yeah. But obviously open with Time for ConFUNtation.
Yes, 100%, because this podcast is a time for us to confront our fucking hubris.
That could be the name, Time for ConFUNtation.
Time for ConFUNtation. That could be a good
episode
alright name.
Yeah.
I like that.
So anyway, once again though, a similar issue arises with Chopper like it does with Sledgehammer, in that his level fucking sucks.
It does. You're just in this... Well, he gets like 2 levels. You start off in these caves that become a boiler room with this...
It reminds me of like the original RE2 sewer section.
Yeah.
Like it's like you're going through all like these manholes and like turning pipes and things like that.
Yeah, and like Resident Evil 2, it's the 3rd
area.
Yeah,
exactly. But it's also terrible.
Yeah.
Because there's like no space to maneuver whatsoever.
No, there's lots of long corridors where you are surrounded by walls on just all sides, and it's basically a one way thing. So you better make sure you've got holy water.
Yeah.
On the plus side, it's also got an infinite hiding space. It has for some reason, there's a room with a fish tank in it.
Yes,
and
that always works.
You hide behind the fish tank, which, for the record, made of glass. And Chopper just looks around and goes, "Oh, nice trick," and leaves.
I think the thing that I always remember about it is there's that section in which you're going up and down.
Oh god, it's my dad.
Oh, your dad's calling.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to reject my dad call.
No, ask him about Clock Tower. But yeah, there's this one section in which you're in these 3 rooms that are separated by an elevator, so you're on these free floors that you have to go up and down between to solve a puzzle. And they're just linear little corridors, and each one just has Chopper in. And the only seeming solution is just to go back up to another floor and come down and hope he's not there that time.
Yeah, that's what I mean about how he just pops up.
Yeah.
He doesn't... like at least with Sledgehammer, he will come through a door, and Corroder's kind of the same.
Yeah.
But that's just good old dad. I'll give him a call back after this podcast. But subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear a phone call with my dad.
Please comment below.
Yeah, leave a comment for my dad below. I'll make sure it gets to him. But yeah, honestly, kind of a shit level, all things considered. Besides Chopper's funny line.
So what he says? Nice trick.
Oh, nice trick.
What's his other line?
It's something like catch or something like that, because he throws axes at you.
Yeah.
It's funny because he's like, oh, nice trick in the game, but in the actual cutscenes he's like, Alyssa, I have killed 100 of your friends, and all this.
Yeah, like he sounds like continental, like he's from Europe or something.
He does. Let's just again, the Clock Tower developers did not know what Wales is like. But eventually you get past this section after doing some basic puzzle solving. It does involve going up and down this stupid elevator.
Yeah.
Oh, nice trick.
I guess it's worth noting one of the things that makes this Chopper level suck so much is that this is the guy I was talking about who stunlocks you. He's quicker than you in movement, he's quicker than you in attacking. And like just because of the way the panic system works, he can just 1-2 punch you and kill you dead.
Well, he's also the first enemy who has a ranged attack whilst chasing you, because he can throw axes at you even when you're not in his fight.
Yeah.
And they knock you down and you start panicking and you can't dodge them because the areas are so small.
Yeah, I got lucky enough with them because he kept throwing them in areas that were like round, so I could round the corner.
Yeah.
But
it's like the game has fixed camera angles as well, so he can be off screen and just throw shit at you and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Very fucking irritating as a person to run from. Then the second half of this level happens. Chopper gets a lot of chances.
Probably like the most screen time of any of the subordinates, really.
Yeah, because you then cut back to a flashback of Alyssa in her childhood. Like Alyssa is watching her own like childhood.
Yeah, it's
happen.
like you escape from the sewer area where you fight Chopper and you end up back at the house, but it's in the past.
And and that's when you see like Alyssa's mum setting up something about a pendant and about courage, and she goes like, oh, Alyssa's laughed for the first time, I have to go get her father to come see this. Then Alyssa rushes over to go see what her father is doing, because Alyssa's father died long before she ever knew him, and she finds her granddad strangling and wrestling her father, going like, why did Nancy have to marry a man like you? And he goes to the granddad goes to throw him off a balcony. Coincidentally, an axe just turns by itself, and the dad falls onto it. So it seems like it's like manslaughter, but the granddad totally owns it and just goes like, you deserved everything that was coming to you, and storms off. And that's when Chopper comes down and says, your grandfather killed him. They spend the rest of the dialogue talking about how the grandfather is very proud of the Ruder lineage and how he has
the Hamilton bloodline and things like that.
Yeah, he says like he has to make sure that the Hamilton Ruders are like strong, and he
really good F1 drivers.
Yeah, and fucking I didn't. That's a good one. That's a deep cut I didn't even fucking pick up on. But then you have this kind of fake out boss fight with Chopper, where you fight him for a bit and he sucks you into a pool of goo, and you turn up in a graveyard.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if it's meant to be in Rome, because you encounter a bunch of ghosts from Roman times.
Yeah, you encounter a bunch of dancing ghosts that are doing interpretive dance who are all past Ruders.
Yeah.
And
they're telling you about the sick Ruder legacy and how you fit into all this dark machinations and things like that.
Yeah, and Chopper claims he's killed all of them.
Yeah.
Despite being from 1655. And he ends up and then you have to do these two really fucking boring puzzles. Like, one of them is just press 1, 2, and 3 in an order, and the other one is you go into an ancient Egyptian tomb and swap slabs around.
So it's like, there's a central room and then 3 corridors leading off to 3 other rooms.
Yeah.
And there are 3 slabs in each of those rooms that you have to move around to get to the right place where they need to be.
Yeah. And
there's just a ghost in each corridor, and that's the entire puzzle.
Yeah, the whole thing is just like, you put the yellow button on the yellow room and the yellow ghost vanishes. Which, when I say Egyptian, that's not me, like, that's not a Freudian slip. No. There's fucking, like
hieroglyphics.
Yeah, there's hieroglyphics and bird people on the walls. like, didn't you just set up that the Ruders are Roman?
Yeah.
I guess they go further back than that, but
I think this is like the point in the game where I just completely lost track of where we are or what we were doing. Like, I'm like, where is this tomb? What's going on? Like, that's when it completely lost its ability to intuit to me what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and like, I do apologize if it seems like we're not talking enough about gameplay, but we really did get to the gist of how you play this.
Yeah,
really,
there's no nuance, there's no change.
No, it's Clock Tower 3 is more about this weird roller coaster of events you go through and how silly they get.
Yeah.
I actually want to say, this was something I noticed on this second playthrough, is past the Egyptian tomb bit, you see these two statues, and they are of the next subordinates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you see the two next subordinates that are
and
standing
who deigned to honor them so?
They would be the return of a famous Clock Tower character, perhaps the only Clock Tower character. They are both the Scissor Man.
Yes, but this time, this ain't your grandpa's clock tower.
No.
There ain't just a Scissor Man.
No.
There's a Scissor Woman.
Yes, there is Scissor Man and Scissor Woman.
Although we are getting a little ahead of ourselves.
We are a bit, because you then like before they get introduced, you end up fighting Chopper. He's weirdly the easiest fight I had.
Yeah.
Well,
I think you can dodge his axes by crouching, right?
You can also shoot past them. So if you have a charge shot on the bow, you can knock the axe out of his hand, and then when you hit him, he actually gets knocked down, so you just have an easier opening.
Yeah, like you get your revenge and you can start stun-locking him.
Yeah, and it seems as though the souls you're putting at peace in this one to try and tie this up to the first half.
It's like all the Ruders, right?
Yeah, the Ruders all say thank you, and they all ascend to heaven.
We can finally stop doing interpretive dance.
Yeah, they do. They just vanish and they wave at her and all this stuff. And she sees a faint ghost of her mum, who goes like...
Well, I think you find your mum's car, right?
You do, and because the implication is that one of the subordinates has killed Alyssa's mum somewhere.
Yeah.
But
it's like the real low point of the story, you know, before the heroes return.
Exactly. It's classic storytelling. The second chapter of the 3 chapters in this 2-part game.
It's really the darkest part of Clock Tower 3, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's I mean, to be fair, they tried to do darker stuff and made it look silly. So any amount of subtlety is just like, wow, it's a miracle.
So anyway, upon Chopper's defeat, you are then returned to what is obviously just England again.
Yeah, but
you're in like town.
Yeah, well, there's you start off in a big marble spiral staircase where Dennis reunites with Alyssa, and she said, and she says like this pendant my mother gave me is the secret, but I only have 3 parts of it. I need to get the 4th from the 4th subordinates. Like they end up leaving that spiral staircase to go into a forest that leads into a town.
Yeah.
And then you walk through it a bit, and then some woman's in the window who just says, "Oh, hi, Dennis," because Dennis is now following you. And Dennis goes, "Oh, that's my sister, who's meant to be in Africa for 6 months."
Yeah, she looks a lot like Lisa Garland from Silent Hill.
She does actually, yeah.
Which is a very classic nurse outfit with the little hat and the blouse.
Yeah, which is kind of lines up because you then go in. She's in a hospital. You go into there. Dennis and the sister reunite, and then the sister.
Well, it's the most like, you dense motherfucking idiots. Like, where this woman is like, "Oh, Dennis, it's me, trust me immediately." And they go, "Yeah."
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know. This is a crazy place. And sure enough, she fucking X-Men mystiques her way.
Yeah,
into...
where it's like, Dennis is like, "Oh, I missed you so much." And then she turns into Scissor Woman and she's like, "Oh, I missed you too, Dennis." And starts flying all around.
Yeah, throws him around, jumps onto a hospital wheel cart that wheels through. Then the Scissor Man also comes down.
Well, I think what it was, because we actually, just so I could get a remembrance of how the game felt to play, we did play a little bit of the save that you've been doing, and it was at this section where your save was. I think a gurney wheels in with a tarp over it.
Yeah.
And Scissor Man is lying on the tarp and then goes, "Yeah!" like that.
He pops out.
Yeah.
Like it's so good, because, like, for the record, neither Scissor Man nor Scissor Woman, these don't look like a weird morphed schoolboy with a big head.
No.
Like, they look nothing like the original Scissor Man. These are like acrobats. These are
they're wearing like Chinese performing outfits.
They are, and And the flavor is that they were a pair of acrobats from China in the 1100s.
Yeah,
who got hired by an English noble called Lord Borroughs and turned out to be some of the worst murderers who have ever lived.
Well, I think they served as like executioners, right?
They did, yeah, and they were immortalized as these two statues in a random tomb that in this earlier part in the game. And then the game does a weird gimmick with them where you think, oh, okay, so you got two chasers, right?
Yeah.
No, the hospital is like a mirror world.
Yeah, to continue with the weird Silent Hill illusions that began with the nurse, the hospital is split into two areas, a dark world and a light world.
Yeah.
And you go between them by going through a mirror. And Scissor Woman haunts one of them and Scissor Man haunts the other.
Yeah, which there's no real difference between how they act, is there?
No, they're the exact same.
Yeah, which is a huge waste of potential.
Yeah, especially since Scissor Woman has the better voice lines.
She does.
Like, she goes, snickety slice!
Yeah, she does.
Slice and dice!
I like her design more as well. It's more profound.
Yeah,
Scissor Man is... I mean, it's good.
Yeah,
but I also was a little bit bummed out that, like, they turns out they're brother and sister. Because I loved when we were playing it, I loved the mental image that these two were like a married couple.
Yeah, they were two parts of the same soul that found each other in their love for scissor murdering.
Yeah, because I don't know, that's the kind of hamminess you get from the Clock Tower villains, despite all being horrible, murderous people. They hammer up so much that I just enjoy this idea of two psychopaths in love, that kind of thing.
They've got the same... They're cast in the same mould as Corroder and Chopper, in which they are loving it.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like... They're having so much fun tormenting Alyssa and Dennis.
Yeah.
Like, they've got massive smiles on their faces. They're so like, yeah, we're doing it!
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Yeah.
Which I think really comes to a head in the eventual boss fight you have with them. Do you want to talk about the cutscene, or shall I?
Yeah, so eventually, after going through this hospital, which much in the same way as the other levels is very limited and very short and very linear, you go into like... You end up in this like castle, right? And you go into the basement, and the Scissor Man and the Scissor Woman are like swinging on these pendulum blades.
Yeah, it's this one... I think it's this one big pendulum blade.
Yeah. And they're sitting on it, and they're like, woohoo! And they're having a wonderful time. And underneath them is Dennis. Because obviously they kidnapped him after tricking him into thinking it was her sister.
Yeah.
Oh, his sister, I should say. They've got this on this stone slab, and the pendulum is slowly swinging towards them. And of course, our erstwhile hero Alyssa is like, what am I to do? Oh, I know. I'll spin. And she starts spinning around, grabbing onto things and freaking out.
I like this mental image that this is a deliberate choice of hers.
Yeah, she's like, alright, this is all I know. Eventually the blade cuts through Dennis, killing him. And it's obviously Dennis because he's moving and talking and making lots of noise. No, actually, in actual fact, the Scissor Twins have built an elaborate Dennis robot that they've used to trick Alyssa into thinking that he's died. Because then, like, the little slab that he's on opens up and the real Dennis comes out. And they're like, that's what's going to happen to him if you don't hurry up.
Yeah. And then you have to fight them one by one, again, wasting the fucking potential of this.
Well, it's really annoying as well, because you fight Scissorman first, I think.
You fight Scissor Woman first.
Really? I thought you fought Scissorman and then you kill him and then you fight Scissor Woman and she's really mad about it.
No, it's the opposite. Because what breaks my little heart is that Scissor Woman has a quarter of the health of Scissor Man.
I think the gimmick with Scissor Woman is that you don't auto-aim on her.
Oh, do you not?
No, that was the thing that was made it really annoying, is that you have to turn Alyssa to face her before you begin firing.
Oh god, that's a fucking difficulty curve.
Yeah.
Again, another one of these cases of the game, they just don't know. If the game is starting to get too easy, they're just like, we'll just make it really hard.
Yeah, because she like shoots like weird tornadoes at you. She's got all these moves. It's really annoying.
Which is a really sad way to go for some of my favorite. Like, it's a very hard pick between the subordinates for who's my favorite. It's Corroder. He's my favorite by a long shot.
Yeah, just for reference, for the recording of this entire podcast, we have had a really low resolution, blurry picture of Corroder. And it's from his boss fight, so it like says Corroder in this orange, really garish font.
I've had this picture saved on my desktop for 3 years. It's been
like if you just Google Clock Tower 3 Corroder, there are some really good pictures of him out there.
Yeah, he's such a king, such a king.
Star. Yeah,
like which I think I think then after that, I'd say the Scissor Twins are my favourite, and then Chopper, and then there's a huge gap where Sledgehammer is right at the bottom.
Yeah, Sledgehammer really lets the side down because he's just so boring.
He
like
is.
The only thing he says is Alyssa. He just goes Alyssa, and it's not as he's not hamming it up quite as much.
Yeah, I actually, when I was playing the Corroder fight, my friend Steve recommended that I just turn Corroder's laughter into my text tone because we were hearing it so much while I was playing it that he was just like he just.
I mean, that's the thing about these boss fights, right? Is that they don't have very many audio clips, so you just hear the same. Like Chopper says, "Nice trick," like 50,000 times over the course of one playthrough.
Yeah. One time I'd used the invisible ring to get away from him, and he had said that 4 times in a row within the span of about 5 seconds. And it was like, how the fuck? Oh, Jesus.
Like, wow.
Oh my god. Which sounds like it'd get annoying. It was more annoying as just trying to run
it just
from him.
contributes to the game's ridiculous tone. Like, you get to the point where you're playing through it and you think to yourself, like, this is so stupid, and everything just adds to that feeling. It just really all comes together to form this... Because the gameplay is not the thing that's bringing you back. That's not the thing that you're getting excited about.
No.
It's just like, what dumb thing is going to happen next?
Yeah, and I frankly... Do we want to go into the finale of this game with the final boss, or do we want to leave him a surprise for the viewers if they ever want to check out Clock Tower 3? Because
I think we should talk about it. But if you want to be unspoiled on some of the most ridiculous shit that's ever happened in the video game, just, I don't know, skip this part of the podcast. But I feel like we have to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm going to edit in a clip of me saying a timestamp. If you want to jump to that, then please do. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll have like a very sped up time for ConFUNtation playing behind it.
Skip to 1 hour, 37 minutes, and 44 seconds to avoid spoilers.
Let us talk about the man, the myth, the legend, the mastermind behind it all, Lord motherfucking Borroughs.
Yeah, it is eventually revealed that the Dark Man is actually Alyssa's grandfather. And he is so obsessed with the Hamilton bloodline that he's going to eat Alyssa's heart so that they can be together forever, and that she will remain unsullied by some unworthy man.
Yeah, however, this is also the perfect storm to turn him into the ultimate subordinate. One who can effectively house the spirit of the most powerful subordinate that has ever lived. Who basically... The subordinates, I think they imply they serve things called entities. I think Lord Borroughs became an entity by being so evil that...
So Lord Borroughs is actually the English noble lord who employed... the Scissor Twins.
Yeah.
And his legacy of evil has loomed large over the last 1,000 years. Because he's kind of been pulling the strings and orchestrating all this horrible shit that's happened over the last 100 or 1,000 years.
Yeah, and he looks like a Francis Drake style character. He's wearing it's weird for a man who's apparently from the 1100s. Or
he looks like a 1600s like conquistador.
He does, and when he eventually shows face after... It's so weird why Alyssa's grandfather has, like, 3 forms, because it's normal, happy grandfather. I love the fucking picture of him skipping around with Alyssa and the
it's
mum.
when Alyssa's, like, doing a weird little duck pose, and her face is, like, bleh, and the hair is, like, splayed out everywhere, and it looks terrible. Yeah,
and it's just got this dad who looks a little bit like one of the Resident Evil 4 villagers. There's classic old granddad. I think his name is Dick.
It is Dick, yeah.
We're gonna get demonetized for talking about Dick. There's the Dark Man who he then becomes by presumably magic, because his skin becomes like pale white.
He doubles in mass as well.
Yeah, he becomes incredibly large.
Yeah.
And then getting even larger than life when he becomes Lord Borroughs. He becomes this like 9-foot tall conquistador with this big feather hat looking like he's about to bring fucking weed and potatoes to your country.
Doesn't he have like a sword as well, like a rapier?
Yeah, he has a rapier. He has a big magical rapier. Rapier, come on.
Rapier.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Connor. And then you climb up to the top of the clock tower to face him.
And it's ridiculously lavish. Like, the area which makes up the clock tower, it looks like it's from the end of a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
Like, it's like this, like, massive white room with these, like, ridiculous, like, glass stairs that go a lot up it.
Yeah, for the epic story that is Clock Tower 3, a game that can comfortably be beaten in about 5 hours.
Yeah. Like, you're in a dingy, like, English World War II hospital, and then you go from there to a normal-looking medieval castle, where there's a bunch of really irritating sections where you have to, like, pull levers and then run through dangerous areas to get to them before they close.
Yeah.
And then you're in this lavish, like, heavenly, like, beautiful room, ascending the clock tower.
Yeah. Where you then reach the final confrontation, the time for confrontation that it is.
Well, before we talk about the Borroughs boss fight, I do want to briefly mention the section in which you are ascending the clock tower. Because the game, as I said previously, the only two things you can make Alyssa do is throw water and crouch, but it's trying to have a section in which you're like moving Alyssa up these areas doing like puzzles and stuff. But the only solution you can have to any puzzle is you crouch.
Yeah.
Like that's you're going through all these like gears and all these like mechanical whirrings and stuff.
Yeah.
And all it ever gets you to do is crouch.
Oh, don't mislead the audience. There's another type of puzzle that I briefly touched upon, which is that you can hold down the square button to walk, and you sometimes need that for balancing puzzles. And that's about it.
Yeah. So it's like, the developers are like, okay, we're at the finale of our game, we need to build up to something more dramatic. But there's just nothing to build with, because all you can do is crouch and walk.
Yeah, and throw water, which... Yeah, like they probably could have put the time into expanding these mechanics and doing something more with the water or whatever, but they don't. They really don't.
Because they then realised that they were making Clock Tower 3.
Yeah, and they had to get it out by the end of 2022.
Yeah, so you kind of
2002, sorry.
2022, baby.
Yeah, damn, this game was very recent.
But yeah, so you go through this castle area, and I kind of like the castle because it feels like the game is becoming a bit more imaginative. Like, you're going through all these, like, surreal, weird rooms, reading a bunch of documents, and, like, you find a bunch of your grandpa's diary notes where he's like, my granddaughter is so cool. I probably want to kiss her, but that's illegal. So I'm going to eat her heart instead, and all things like that.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah.
Like, I remember there's a bit where you go into, like, your grandfather's study, but it's this ridiculous massive room with a giant painting of Lord Borroughs. And I think like Lord Borroughs comes in there and he's like, oh, I wonder what Alyssa's up to, and Alyssa's like hiding behind this vase like, oh yeah. Well,
yeah, because he the grandfather steps up to the painting of Lord Borroughs and says like, I'm gonna honor you or something. He makes some ridiculous speech, and then I think he like erupts in blood and gets sucked into the painting.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that Alyssa finds him and he reveals himself to be her grandfather. Yeah. And he's like, Alyssa, I've done this all for you. Won't you join with me and become one with me? And she's like, no. And he goes, what? How is that not an appealing offer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've been grandparent and child for how many years?
Yeah.
14, 15? Who's keeping track anymore?
So then he's like, are you sure you don't want to become one with me? And she goes, I'm pretty sure, Grandpa. And he goes, fine, fuck you anyway. I'm going to become Lord Borroughs. And he storms off to absorb this painting. Yeah, I'm going to become Lord Borroughs and become the most powerful entity of all time. And what do you think about that, Alyssa?
And then he fucking animorphs into Lord Borroughs, and you have the longest fucking boring boss fight you've ever fucking seen.
Yeah, so you reach the top. I was going to say you reach the clock of the top tower. You reach the top of the clock tower.
Yeah.
And you fight Lord Borroughs. I think Dennis like sacrifices himself to like help you get up there.
Oh yeah, Dennis like getting freed from the Scissor Twins tries to help you, and he falls into the abyss and is presumed dead. While the ghost of Alyssa's mum is being like Obi-Wan Kenobi, going, use the fucking Buddha bloodline.
So you're on top of this tower, and it's like a dusky sky, and it's beautiful. And what the area is this circular arena with like a tombstone on top of it. And the entire boss fight is Lord Borroughs will stand on one end of the thing and shoot stuff at you, and you'll be Alyssa and you'll shoot stuff at him. And then when he walks over to you, you just run around the tombstone and repeat ad nauseum for like, no joke, an hour.
Yeah. Fucking, like, it takes forever. I mean, he's meant to go up to you and hit you with his sword.
Yeah.
But if you put yourself behind this tombstone, he will just shoot you instead, at which point the game just becomes, okay, press duck, fire arrow,
Yeah,
press
it's
duck.
like the most. I feel like I'm a robot inputting commands of all time, where it's just like, all right, duck, shoot, and like the ducking looks janky as well. Like it barely feels like you ever actually dodge it. But as long as you're holding the dodge button when he does it, it just goes through you.
Yeah, the ducking is very weird in the game because there are times where I've like split second probably pressed the button too late and still somehow avoided an attack.
Yeah.
But I am basing that off of the Corroder fight, and I think those hitboxes are a lot more janky than...
From what I can tell, I think when you're holding crouch, Alyssa's hitbox immediately becomes she is crouching. There's like no transition. It's just standing, crouched.
Yeah, even if the animation is
Yeah,
playing.
exactly, yeah.
Which, there's a lot of fucking input delay as well. Well, not input delay, but animation delay.
Yeah.
Between, like any type of crouching and then crawling or anything like that.
Yeah.
And
So there is two little accoutrements to the Borroughs boss fight that I would like to discuss. The first is what he yells at you when he attacks you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you want to share in my rendition, but every time he shoots one of his little purple balls at you, he just goes, "Yo-ha!"
Yeah, he goes, "Wah-ha!" or something
Yeah.
like that.
Like, when I was reading a wiki about how to beat him, even the person writing it was like, I have no idea what he says there. I think it might be "you're here" or "I'm
Yeah.
here," but no, it just sounds like he's going, "Your hair!"
Yeah, I mean, he also says, "There's no escape,"
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
I mean, dude.
Yeah, I'm fighting you, man.
I've just seen what's happened to Dennis.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I didn't pack a parachute.
And then the other thing which I love, I think it's so funny, is that similar to how Alyssa has her judgment shot, Lord Borroughs has his own judgment shot.
I don't fucking remember this, really.
Do you not remember this? He can tether you the same way that you can tether him.
Ah.
And if he does his special move, he like summons this skull from the heavens, and it like it like shoots a laser beam at Alyssa and it kills you in one hit.
Oh my fucking god.
I know, it's fucking hilarious.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, it's the only point in the game in which it feels like it suitably escalates the threat level.
Yeah.
Where it's like Lord Borroughs is so powerful that even he has a judgment shot.
It's just a shame that the boss fight itself is so spongy.
Yeah. He's got like 99 million bajillion years on his judgment scale.
Yeah, he's got over 1,000 for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it might be 2,048 is my rough estimate.
And he's got like 3 health bars and he takes forever to kill. Like it's so tedious.
Yeah. But thankfully, the moment immediately after that, if you get him down, is that he has his second wind and goes like, you thought this could really defeat me? And then you just have to run up to the tomb and find like your mum's pendant, and then the whole thing is done.
So the thing is that your mum is dead.
Yeah.
And she's like a statue. Like she's like a statue in the final boss fight.
Yeah.
And there's a part when you defeat Lord Borroughs in which you have to navigate to the statue's head to win the boss fight. If you don't do it in a certain amount of time, you will die.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is some Heather Mason.
Final Fantasy.
I almost said Final Fantasy 3.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 3.
Yeah, when you've got to eat the Agophalos pendant.
Yeah.
But you get your mother's head and you use your combined Ruder power or whatever to defeat Lord Borroughs once and for all. The game then ends, and I mean that, and that like it just kind of cuts to Alyssa in a field.
Yeah, the clock tower crumbles.
Yeah. So the clock tower crumbles, and it cuts to Alyssa in a field, and then her mum is like, "You have to live, Alyssa. You have to go on." And then the game just ends.
Oh no, not quite. Then Dennis turns out to be alive.
I was ignoring Dennis.
You can't ignore Dennis. He rolled around.
I think he throws the water at you as well at some point.
Oh, I think he might do.
Yeah, during the final boss fight, like you lose the holy water, and he's like, "Alyssa, catch!"
Yeah.
And then he gets like ground up by a bunch of gears.
Fuck.
Yeah. And that is Clock Tower 3, basically in its entirety.
Perhaps one of my favorite games that I have ever played, let alone played on this list. It really. So my main concern with making this podcast is I basically feel like it's impossible for me to describe how much I love this stupid game, because I think descriptions alone don't really sell it. I think this is something that you either should try and find some footage of if you can, or even try and emulate or get a copy of it yourself and give it a shot, because for all of its gameplay faults and annoyances, it is so short that I feel like you can put the time aside to enjoy something this cheesy.
Yeah, like I said, we finished it in a single sitting. It took us like 4 or 5 hours. And you won't enjoy playing it, but you'll love every second of seeing its ridiculous cutscenes.
Yeah, because it's a beautiful bomb.
Yeah,
and
even if you think listening to us describe it is going to take away some of the magic for it for you, you do not understand how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, I mean, I want to note that I think prior to us playing this, I had seen something about Corroder before this, and I was like,
so Stephanie James Sterling once posted the Happy Families cutscene in like a look at this, Clock Tower is the dumbest game of all time.
yeah, I think that's where I saw it, because that was like, God, that was like 2013, 14, something like that.
So I actually have a different background of Clock Tower 3, in that I knew a kid when I was young who owned it, and I borrowed a copy of it. And played it as a youth, and it fucking terrified me.
Oh,
I couldn't handle how pants-shittingly, awfully terrifying it was. I was like, this game's too scary for me.
Oh God.
I also didn't have a memory card.
Oh, so you had to...
Yeah, I kept replaying the game, the first section of it, and I could never even get past the first one with Sledgehammer. Like, he always killed me. I didn't know what to do.
Well, that's sort of the thing, because we were joking about how no one could possibly find the Corroder bit scary at all. And yet, I feel like when you are a child, like, rating boards when it comes to horror is such a weird thing, because they're right in that, you know, if you shouldn't be playing something that's this gory or violent unless you're like 15 or older, right?
Yeah, so just to note, this game has been rated by the British Board of Film Classification. It's been rated a 15 for... Oh, they don't do like Peggy does. They haven't got reasons why.
No, they've just said it's 15 for some reason. And I totally get it, but at the same time, if you're 15 or older, you're not gonna find Clock Tower scary.
No, yeah. This game is not scary in the slightest. Like it feels like sometimes it's trying to be, and it just never gets there.
Yeah. Like the most tense times anytime it's ever been tense has been by complete accident or unintentional, where I'm trying to push back against the game's bullshit of being like, what the fuck, get up, like, don't stun lock me here. Like, that's the closest it gets to any kind of like tension, which you could argue that works, but other games do that better. Resident Evil, Silent Hills, they do that shit way better.
I feel like for me it's the tension of I am 45 minutes into the hour-long Lord Borroughs fight, and he has hit me once, and I'm like, no, I really don't want to have to redo this again.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. But in any case, this opened the list with a fucking bang, and I feel like we should get to the verdicts before we
Well, there's one more thing I want to say, which is that in sharp contrast to Resident Evil 4, this game is as not ported as any game has ever been.
It's only the PS2.
This game has only been available on the PS2. It was released in all regions, so if wherever you live, unless you live in like, I don't know, Brazil or something, you can access a copy of this game. I believe right now you can get it in the UK for like 40-ish quid, which is probably too much for what it is.
I remember I tried to buy a copy of it and it was a bit cheaper than that. But
it's gone up recently.
Yeah, by quite a bit, I would assume.
Because I bought my copy for like £25, and that seemed fairer than what it's going for right now.
Yeah. And which... In that circumstance, I wouldn't recommend it on the basis of a £40 game. Like, absolutely not. But in any case, we should get to our very confusing rankings for this, because I want to open it up with quality as well. Where would you say this is on the list in terms of quality?
It's not a good game.
No.
It's not well made, it's not well designed, its presentation is laughable, and its story is stupid.
Yeah.
It's got awful music. It's not a particularly competent production whatsoever.
Yeah. This for me is low on my list. It absolutely is.
Definitely not the worst game I've ever played.
No.
But it's definitely nowhere near being good.
Yeah, exactly. And where would you put it in terms of it being interesting? As nebulous as that term is.
So for me, it's kind of middle of the pack. It's not interesting inherently on its own terms. It's not like you would write an essay about Clock Tower 3 about its place in the gaming industry. Apart from maybe about where it stands as like one of the first Stalker type games. For me, it's interesting exclusively because of how amusing it is. Like I find great interest in just seeing this weird relic from a different time that nothing else is really quite like it. Even Haunting Ground is very different in tone and style.
I'd second that. I was initially going to say this would be low on my interesting because it, like, game mechanic wise, it doesn't push the boat out, do anything innovative, and like and there are bits, and a few bits and pieces here and there are quite uninspired. Like the third level is a boiler room that, and it's not visually interesting to look at all. But the fact that it is such an oddity does make it interesting. Not to the point where I think about it as like a pioneer of like innovative gaming. It's not that in the slightest. If anything, it's a step back for a genre that it started.
But I can't deny that I don't think about Clock Tower 3 all the time.
Yeah. And in that regard, where would you put it in terms of fun?
Oh, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so fun that it started off this entire process.
Exactly. It might betray the logic a little bit, but if we're going by my feelings, this is at the top of my fun list.
Yeah.
Nothing we've played on this list I have found more fun than us going through this game and looking at its earnest attempts at being this weird little spooky story about time-traveling murderer fighting,
like incest getting.
Yeah. God, like
there's truly nothing out there like it.
Yeah.
And if you can emulate it, then please do. Please give it a try. It's so short that you can get through it in a single sitting.
Yeah.
Like it's worth seeking out just to have a fun time with dumb video games.
Absolutely. So after the pains of the coronavirus pandemic, of us being locked inside and you inviting me over and us experiencing this wonderful game, what did I treat you to afterwards?
Well, Connor, I gave you Clock Tower 3, another stellar entry in the Capcom Adult Masterpiece series. You made me play Shadow the Hedgehog.
I fucking did.
Yeah. And not just Shadow the Hedgehog, the PS2 version of Shadow the Hedgehog, which is not playable whatsoever.
One of the worst ports I think we've ever...
Yeah, so that will be our next episode. We will be talking about Shadow the Hedgehog for the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, this one is going to be very much a me thing, but like Corroder, I wanted to make you my victim. I was going to feast on your pain and become a true subordinate.
You will receive the fiercest of judgments for your sins.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to us taking that to the battlefield where you will duck under my attacks, and in exchange, I will take 5 years to beat.
Yeah. Please look forward to that live stream.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. I do apologize if it's been a little bit chaotic, but this game fills us with such a passion that there's no other way to just talk about this other than to gush about it. And frankly, this is a game I might even consider doing a full review of one day.
Yeah.
Because I love Clock Tower 3.
I mean, I also think this is more indicative of how this list is going to continue onwards, because a lot of these games will ignite the same passion in us and the same kind of frantic, could you believe that fucking shit?
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 we did first because we felt we had to do a game that was like, we could be analytical about, but we could talk about, that was competent. This is a game that is silly and is fun to talk about, and that's what we're going to be doing a lot more of coming up.
100%. And in which case then, I hope you do enjoy us talking about Shadow the Hedgehog next time.
Oh wait, Connor, sorry.
Oh.
Don't mean to cut you off there, but actually, things have changed since our last episode.
Oh yeah.
I actually have things to promote now, to plug.
You do? Ash has done things on the internet.
I am an internet superstar, as we all know. It's not anything fancy, but recently I have written a review of Fatal Frame 3 The Tormented, another PS2 horror game. It's way too long, and, that's fine. But
a bit like the game, then.
A bit like the game, yeah. It's very, very, very appropriate. But, if you're curious in seeing me when I'm trying to be serious, then please feel free to head over to my blog. A link will be in the description. And checking it out, I would appreciate that a great deal.
Yep, absolutely. I'll be popping that in the description if you want to check it out. And if YouTube decides to let me actually put it as a card thing on the...
Yeah, they're trying to suppress me. They don't want me to be too hot.
Yeah, and I'll pop it on there as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I hope you join us next time for Shadow the fucking Hedgehog. This one's going to be very personal to me, so...
Alright, kids. Make good choices. Live your life well.
Take care, everyone, and always check your cupboards for Corroder.
Ciao!
Prepare to die!